What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. We make up K and A here on this channel. And hey, look, as we get started, while Anwar he's taped live. I mean, technically, you might watch this in 6 months, and he's no longer in Atlanta, Georgia, for the SEC Media Days. But as we record this today on a Tuesday, he is in Atlanta. Do us a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and get those notifications. So every time we go live, it always means more. Anwar finding that out over the course of the last 48 hours or so in Hotlanta. Anwar, there's going to be a lot of conversation in this video about Sarkisian and kind of his rep in, the middle of SEC land and what your perspective of it has been. But just from a day two check-in standpoint, how goes things?
It's good. I think, day one, there's, excitement or energy that was here, Catch. But day two was Alabama. And it's almost like everything changes. It is like Nick Saban comes and it's like rock star kind of thing where, a lot of the guys go in, the coaches go through the front, and there's a lot of fans that get the chance to greet and meet them. And Nick just kind of avoided that portion of it. He went like backstage somewhere and just popped up, randomly. So he kind of avoided like the going through portion of it. And then, then it's just, listening to Saban, it's listening to the GOAT, Catch. You're sitting there, you're listening to the GOAT in real time, talk to you about, things that are happening within his program, NIL, everything as relates to the future. I think Kurt Bowles had a question at the end about maybe some of his proteges catching up with him. And he's saying like, yeah, this is kind of the thing that he thought would happen at some point. So it really, day two really becomes the Nick Saban show, the Alabama show, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, like all these guys. That's really what day two becomes. It's really Bama-centric, and it's really, again, exciting to see because, Catch, again, from a Big 12 perspective, we never had anything like that at Big 12 Media Days. I mean, you would maybe Lincoln Riley when he was cooking a little bit, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't guys in a press conference, Catch, holding their hands up for 20 minutes and not getting their questions answered because there's that many people that have their hands raised. It just became a totally different beast and different element when Saban entered the room.
Yeah, it's funny. I can remember going back to Big Ten Media Day 20 years ago in Chicago, and Joe Paterno had kind of the same thing. He's just been around for so long. It was such an institution that, you would literally watch guys in the breakout type sessions humiliate themselves in the name of asking a question and having a little back and forth contact. And you could just tell Saban was ready to be done with all of it. But it's a chance for the non-Alabama local media to be able to be around the king and to be able to be within arm's length in a way that they don't normally have.
And Catch, he thanked the media for the job that they do, which is everything opposite of what you probably thought Nick Saban would say to the media. I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Well, I'm sure the other thing that's the elephant in the room, and I was going to really bring this up with you with regards to Saban, like he's over 70 now. Mm-hmm. Nobody really knows when he's going to depart. But if I said he's coaching till he's 80, that feels like a bit much, right? Like it sounds like Coach Saban being the head coach at 80. I won't call it implausible, but it sounds unlikely. So it just means that the clock is running on the number of these opportunities that will exist. And it will be interesting because Texas, in theory, is 1, 2, 3 seasons away from being able to be in a position to be a part of this. Texas and Oklahoma will be showing up when the Saban experience at an event like this is winding down. And I wonder if it all comes together in a way where the Texas and Oklahoma contingent that weren't already there, like yourself and Kurt Bowles, and I think even Sooner Scoop had somebody there. The idea of checking this thing out was clearly something that was on the minds of a lot of people, or at least some people. I wonder if this will be we're in the beginning of the end of an era for Saban at these events. There's only so many left. It's kind of cool that you were able to see it in the event when Texas shows up. This thing's not the same anymore. And you've got people saying things like, back in the day, man, you really should have seen the way that it was when Alabama had this thing really going. And maybe we will get a chance to see that firsthand, but you can't take it for granted, which is why being able to be there this year, I would think, is a cool experience. You now have something to compare everything else to over time.
Yeah, Catch. And, I wish, take it really back. The thing that guys start telling me is this thing was even wilder when it was being held in the state of Alabama for all those years, because they'd say like that was just a scene that you probably have to go on YouTube and check it out, that it was like worship. I mean, it was like the worship of Saban and what's going to happen and what happened. And it is going to be interesting, Catch, because when Texas comes in and when OU comes in, I don't know how many people in the SEC are really have full grasp of what the Texas brand is. I think it's so easy to look at the results and go in that direction. But when you start talking about the brand of Texas and what that attention is going to bring, even though SEC Media Day is already huge, but now all of a sudden you'll have a contingent of Texas fans descending upon Atlanta. Like you'll just have that. They'll have a contingent of media people who are really, really interested in what Sarkisian has to say as relates to that program. And of course, by that time, Arch is going to be a huge topic, as going forward. So, there will be a lot to talk about. So yes, seeing it now and where we're at. And again, it catches, like, I keep saying this, but Texas keeps coming up in conversation after conversation after conversation. Like already right now, it's getting sprinkled in. Longhorns this, Longhorns that, Longhorns this. Hell, our friend Billy Lucci has asked me to come on their show. So, I mean, I'm probably going to do that at some point on Tuesday. So, it is interesting to see what Alabama is, but then getting the hint of what Texas will bring when they do arrive.
Well, it's funny. I've listened to you many things, exchanges that you've had with Bryce Young, Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin, and it's weird the amount of respect that Sarkisian seems to hold in the SEC part of the world versus that in the state of Texas, where just yesterday, Dave Campbell's Texas football. I'm trying to find it right now.
Oh boy.
They came out with like their list of the top coaches in the Big 12, or excuse me, in the state of Texas.
So this is something you and I talked about before.
This just happened yesterday.
No, but you and I had talked about that where Sarkisian would rank on that list if we had did something. You and I have talked about that for weeks, actually.
Well, it came out yesterday.
Okay.
And they did a power ranking of the top coaches in the Big 12, or excuse me, in the state of Texas. And Sarkisian came in 5th.
Wow. Give me the 4 ahead of him.
That's what I'm trying to find right now. Give me just a second. So number 1, here it is. I've got it right here in front of me, is Jimbo Fisher.
Okay.
Number 2 is Dave Aranda.
Okay.
Number 3 is Jeff Traylor.
Okay.
Number 4, this is the one that got me.
Yeah, where are we going? Sunny Dykes?
Dana Holgerson.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Wow. Over the history of Dykes and what he's been able to do at SMU?
I mean, they at least were. So then it goes Sarkisian, Dykes, Dana Dimmel, Joey McGuire, Rhett Lashley, Seth Luttrell, Jake Spivital, and then Mike Bloomgreen. So if you're Dykes, you're probably thinking you're the one that got hard done in here.
Yeah.
Sarkisian is listed behind Dana Holgerson, who, I mean, I don't know how to, from my perspective.
Look at you, speechless.
from my perspective, he was inconsequential at West
Mm-hmm.
Virginia. I don't know that you would say he failed, and nobody was ever tripping about having to take on a Dana Holgerson-led team. I think if he had asked me before I saw the results of that, I might have even forgotten that he was at U of H. So for the head coach at the University of Texas, and Jeff Traylor low-key sneaking in at 3 is wildly insulting to Steve Sarkisian. Whether it's fair or not, is a different conversation. That the guy that's being paid $5.7 million a year is being charged with taking on Alabama and lead Texas into this new territory of greatness. And inside the state of Texas, the thought is he's just a guy. Whereas in Atlanta right now, it's hard to find anybody that you've talked to that would describe him as anything other than incredibly well thought of and towards the top of the food chain.
So Catch, when I've been here, I've been able to ask Coach Saban about, Sarkisian, and he talked about Grace, basically how great of addition that he was to the staff, but he met to that Alabama staff, and just talking about how much success he'll believe that Sarkisian is going to have, and I feel like it was very, very genuine there. I was able to ask Will Anderson, who just walking past me, by the way, super dapper, and he knew who, by the way, was loving his NIL stuff. He said, anybody want an NIL, anybody wants to give me an NIL contract, feel free. I mean, so props to that man for eating it up. But he talked about how much he respected Sark, and he mentioned Kyle Flood's name as well. But what that person is. I also talked to Bryce Young, that I'm gonna have a lot more details in our war room on Thursday of this week. I talked to Bryce Young. Bryce Young tells me the main reason he went to Alabama was because of Steve Sarkisian, and talked about even in that 1 year that they were together, how much he was able to learn from Sarkisian and what that really kind of meant from him and his development. Lane Kiffin the same way. Asked Lane Kiffin about him, and again, tons of great things to say. He's going to be incredibly successful. I mean, so you go from a national perspective, you get outside of the state of Texas, everyone thinks, he's the earth, moon, and stars. Everyone thinks he's the real deal. Everyone thinks that this last year was probably the anomaly, but you'll see it going forward because that's how good of a coach he is. I think if I had known that and asked anybody here, did they think he was the 5th best college football coach in the state, they probably would have scoffed, because the pedestal that they place him on is so much higher than sometimes you hear in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, if you give that list to that same list to people at SEC Media Day, I'm guessing he finishes 3rd. Jimbo's 1, or Randy gets the benefit of the doubt is 2. The thing is, in the state of Alabama, they would look at a UTSA and just scoff. They just would say that's not real football.
Yeah.
That's certainly not SEC football. And they do the exact same with Houston. They just would scoff at it all. Like out of principle, they would have the coaches in that conference rated above those who are not in the conference. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of Charlie Strong. When the Charlie Strong thing went completely sideways, there were just a lot of people nationally that thought to themselves, Texas is just way messed up. That place must be messed up, because Charlie Strong had a certain amount of street cred, and he had done such a good job at Louisville that it could be going so haywire, and that people were so on tilt about what his program was producing. It boggled the mind of a lot of people. Whereas I don't know that Tom Herman was ever that beloved nationally. I think Charlie Strong had a really high street cred. I think people like to tell themselves they love Charlie. And Sarkisian, I think for both of us, we've heard less negative and more positive talk from all areas of the college football world towards Sark than maybe just about anybody we've ever covered.
Catch, be honest with you, I don't know if I've heard a bad word said about him, to be quite honest with you. I know, and Sap is one of my close friends, and he was when Sarkisian was in Oakland, Sap was out there. Even Sap says great things about Sarkisian dating back to the NFL days. So, the only thing I've probably ever negatively heard was maybe the Atlanta Falcons days. Was probably the only time I've heard people say, that he wasn't ready or for whatever reasons. Outside of that, it's always positive as far as, character, or you don't hear anything to that effect. So I really very rarely have I heard anybody say anything. And look, from a recruiting perspective, Catch, and look, and I know, Catch, recruiting is when you separate the real from the fake. And if you are a fake, you get exposed in recruiting. You don't get top-notch recruits if you're about that BS. People get to know who you are. They get to know everything about you through the process. And they know, and look, Catch, all the years you've done recruiting, you've heard guys, even if they may have committed, say, yeah, that guy's full of shit, but I want to go to Texas, right? That assistant, I don't really love him, but, I want to get a degree from McCombs or whatever the case may be. Even on the recruiting, I've never heard kids say like, man, this guy's full of it, but I want to go there anyway. It's, it's almost like, Catch, we're just the only component that's missing is just the wins to complete the package. Because everything else says like this thing is an incredible product, incredible package. And you're saying like, you see the recruiting, you got the good reputation, like at Texas, DKR, great fan base, like everything is there. It's just missing one little ingredient, and know that it's not a cake reference.
I wrote the column a couple of weeks ago, and in this moment, it really, I think, stands out. It's time for Steve Sarkisian this season to earn some damn respect. And he has it in a lot of places. He has the least amount of it close to home. The people in the state of Texas, and that is one day that entire conglomerate will go to SEC Media Day. Mm-hmm. And the people at SEC Media Day will suddenly feel like, where did all these Texans come from? Because, now you've got 2 or 3 people from the Dallas Morning News and the Houston Chronicle and the Express and all of our websites and TV. And suddenly it's like, holy cow. This is why we thought it was important to add the state of Texas to our resume. But it does feel like those same people that will one day flood the SEC Media Day are the ones. And look, to be fair, all they've seen is 5 and 7.
Sure.
So, we were debating with the voters of the Dave Campbell's Texas High School Football Magazine website on their power ranking of head coaches from the state of Texas. Jeff Traylor and Dana Holgerson did not go 5 and 7 last year. Which, again, it just speaks to there's so much that this Texas football team has to prove, just in their existence, to a lot of people, based on not just last year, but the last decade or so. It's why it's important, and it eventually matters in recruiting, that you eventually flex and you eventually remind all of these people why you're that guy. It's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about watching this season. I want to see, with all of this firepower, this is Alabama level offensive firepower to some degree that he has to work with on the offensive side of the ball. Does he have a season where he just blasts a bunch of people? And next year, there won't be any question about where he is on the list, or he might drop 70 on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because it's funny. I talked to a person. It's really a great observation. Which I got to remember the website. I know his name's Colin. Anyway, he talked about the Saban comments about Sarkisian, and how complimentary he was when after. Of course, this is based on a question that I had asked Saban about him, and And he goes, man, that was a great question. And Sark was, he goes, Saban was so nice in his response. And he does a gambling website, and he goes, you know what that means to me? He goes, I got what? He goes, means that Saban's going to take it easy on him. He's not going to run up the score because he likes him. And I go, well, that probably makes, he goes, listen, I do this for a living. Trust me. What that means is I'm not going to run up the score. And he said, A&M may be different. A&M may be different if he has that opportunity. But as relates to Sark, totally different vibe, totally different just feeling to everything.
You know what my reaction to that is? Saban cares more about recruiting, though, than just about anything else. What do we got going on? Who was that?
That was just the man we were talking about.
It was Nick Saban.
Yes.
Oh. I was just about to say, while that may be true, Nick Saban's in on so many recruits in the state of Texas that if there's a middle ground between takes it easy on him and rubs his dirt, really, really rubs it in, if there's a middle ground, I think that's actually where Saban would sit. I think he wants to remind people, I'm still the man and we're still the team, without it being embarrassing. There's got to be some middle ground there that allows for them to cover the spread, but not in such a way that a coach gets fired.
Correct. Because I mean, look, Sark was talking about, he mentions, Saban's wife and how much he's meant to him and the family and all these other kind of things. So you at that point, like you said, you can't run it up on that person. That's like me, like, hey, Catch, Heather's such an amazing person. Like when I think about Jeff Ketchum, like he's so good. He's so nice. His wife is so cool. Like just love the kids. The twins are amazing. And then you're like, well, I can't fire him now. I can't drop the bomb on that guy now. Like there's you got to ease into it at that point. You got to say, well, let's have a conversation, right? That, to your point, Sark is being really nice. Saban's playing nice. They're saying great things about each other. Sark last week, I wouldn't be where I was without Nick Saban. Saban telling this week, like, how much of a great coach and addition was it? There's some love. But to your point, Catch, Saban's still holding on. He's still recruiting. He's still recruiting actively in the state of Texas. And so in order to get those guys, and if you're Nick Saban, what you got to say is, we've got NIL too, and we win. And this is what we do against the teams in Texas. Like that's what Saban really needs. What he really needs is a sweep. Catch, don't you think he needs a Texas, and he needs to beat Texas and Texas A&M to really kind of re-solidify himself in this state. And I'm not saying he's not, but a sweep would help out his cause, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Sweeps are always good. As long as you're not getting swept, sweeps are always good.
Yeah.
The thing I was thinking about on War at the very beginning of all that was these dudes must have talked sometime, let's say last 6 months, because it does feel different between what we're hearing right this second, a kind of a love fest. It didn't feel like anybody was really down for a love fest at this time last year. It was still fresh on Sark trying to raid the Alabama staff, all the way to the point where there was some thought that they made a play at Pete Golding and that Golding was interested in taking the Texas job, only for at that point to Saban to step in and say, okay, enough is enough. You aren't going anywhere. And then, a little bit of you took Banks, you took Flood, you took half my offensive staff, and then even tried potentially. I'm just saying, time heals a lot of wounds. And a year and a half later, it does sound like time has healed some of the wounds from, okay, now we're maybe not mortal enemies, but I'm against you and you're against me, and we're going to be competing against each other in recruiting. Don't think that the gloves don't come off. But now it sounds like Sarkisian could sleep over at the house on a road trip if he wanted to. And that probably wasn't happening last year.
Don't forget to Catch. Remember Saban made that comment about Keelan Robinson and how he could have gotten way more playing time if he had still stayed at Alabama. So that was still like a little jab. And we know Saban's been doing this long enough where there's no accidents. Like he doesn't really slip on and say stuff. He's very smart. He's very deliberate. He knows what he's saying. So even the Keelan Robinson, and then we've heard they weren't too thrilled about Jaleel Billingsley leaving, and so yeah, there was definitely a little bad blood that was going on as far as, like you said, the staff that was leaving. Now you're taking some of our players, as now Texas is becoming like a refugees place for former Bama players.
Halfway house for former Bama players.
It wasn't too thrilled, but now I think you're right, Catch. There had to have been a conversation that was had, and maybe it was just Sark, just as simple as like, dude, I need all the help I can get, man. Like, come on, man, don't bust my balls. And him saying, okay, got it, not a problem. Go ahead and do what you got to do. And hell, if you're Saban at this point, Catch, and you've got one of your better teams that you've had in a while, you probably let a few things go, right? You could probably let a few
remember
things go.
He started some shit with Fisher.
Yes.
So he's fresh off of the little dust up with Jimbo Fisher that, even the commissioner was kind of low-key referencing at the beginning of media days yesterday with regards to distractions and things like that. I think Nick Saban, after everything that's happened this year, probably just wants to get in and out of media days without creating national headlines, because he just had something he had to say about one of his peers in the conference. Just didn't sound like that was part of the goal at all. It's one of the things I've noticed about the first 2 days of SEC Media Day. It feels like every head coach has had a talking to and been told, don't start nothing while you're here. And so far, it's been kind of a kumbaya SEC Media Days. Everybody's just been kind of real, other than talking about the big bad evils of NIL, everybody's been pretty much nice about everybody else.
Yeah, and even when Saban was asked about NIL today, Catch, he was like, I'm not against NIL. And he's like, and he basically says they are part of the haves. He's more concerned about the have-not. So he was almost like, we're good. My program's fine. I'm really referring to the other people. I'm looking out to them. I'm just basically a diplomat. It's which is before, because before the message, Catch, was, hey, listen, Bama boosters, like, you got to get your stuff together. We're going to be able to compete here. And now he switches to like, no, we're good. We're fine. Just worry about the little guys. That's where I'm at. So there, yes, I'm sure Sankey has made sure everyone knows, not today. We're not going to do this. They put Saban on a Tuesday, Jimbo's on a Thursday. Okay, Catch. So that means they won't even be staying in the same hotel at the same time. Like, Saban will check out today, Jimbo will arrive tomorrow. There's not even going to be a meeting in the hallway, just heading to brunch or anything to that effect. That's how I think they wanted to make sure how separate they were, to make sure there was no negative headlines coming out of today or this week. Everything would just be about how great this conference is and how badass they are.
Yeah, no, it's been kindler, gentler SEC Media Days, which makes me wonder if you've even been to an SEC Media Days at all, if the entire time you're there, everybody's uniquely nice to each other. Like, you've been gypped on your experience so far. You haven't had that one moment where you're like, boy, is it different because of this. And let me tell you what I saw. It feels like the craziness and I don't know, the rivalry that exists in all of these schools within the conference against each other has been put to the side so far this week. Oh, maybe that's how they roll. I would have thought there'd be a little bit more violence and anger going into SEC Media Days.
Well, Mike Leach is later today, Catch.
Well, who knows what Mike will say. It's true. Mike comes from, I'll just stop. Mike's from a different place. Hey, do us a solid. I would love to read in the comments what your power rankings of head coaches from the state of Texas would look like in retrospect, as a direct result and response to the way Dave Campbell's Texas High School Football Magazine has ranked the head coaches in the state of Texas. Did they get it right? Should Sark be higher? Should Sark be behind Dykes? I mean, there's probably a couple of people in that poll that felt like they got done wrong in all of it. In the meantime, do us a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell, get notifications, tell your friends about us. This will be the place to be to get your Longhorn information on YouTube as the football season gets started, but not just then, right now. Let everybody know, orangebloods.com and the Orange Bloods Texas football channel for myself and Anwar Richardson. You guys have a wonderful day. Be good to each other. Later.